Welcome back to the Media, Power and the Revolution conference here, run by the Goldsmiths Leverhulme Media Research Centre. And I'm talking to John Naughton, Professor of the Public Understanding of Technology at the Open University, amongst other things. John, fascinating debate between you and Evgeny Morozov, but you agree on a lot of things. What are the main points of agreement?
Well, I agree with him that what he sees as the two besetting sins of public discourse about the internet, at least in terms of policy. That is to say, on the one hand, cyber-utopianism, the belief that the internet is a truly revolutionary thing which will change everything, and what he calls internet centrism, which is about thinking that almost every public policy can be somehow addressed using the internet, and that's it. I agree with him that both of those positions are kind of nuts and superficial and not helpful, and that I also agree with him that they dominate public discourse at the moment. But that's as far as I go with him.
So what are the points of difference?
Well, my main point of difference is that he thinks that what we should be focusing on mainly are applications of the internet which trouble us in various ways, either because they undermine the business models of powerful industries, or because they threaten governments with by being voice to uncomfortable political movements or whatever. And he thinks that that's what we should just focus on, and we should stop worrying about the internet in capital letters.
But the internet's seriously under threat, is it not?
My problem is that if you get clueless legislation, then you may either accidentally or deliberately undermine some of the things that are really important about the net. And the most important thing about the internet, from my point of view, is that it's a global machine for springing surprises. And the thing that's critical about that is that it has lowered the barriers to innovation dramatically. So, for example, five of the largest companies on the internet were all founded with almost no money, and what funding they had at the beginning was comprised mainly the savings of the people who set them up. And that's true for Amazon, it's true for eBay, it's true for Facebook. So you have these amazingly innovative and huge companies which have grown from the kind of innovation that would not once have been possible. I mean, Facebook has 850 million users, half of whom check in every day. If it was a country, it would be the third biggest country in the world. It would have a seat in the United Nations. And it's the product of a single lad sitting in a Harvard dormitory, and all he needed to do was to borrow $1,000 from his friend Eduardo in order to get it on the net. The same thing is true for the web. The web comes from a single individual, mainly Tim Berners-Lee. He has an idea. It can be realized using software. He gets permission from his boss to spend 6 months working on it, and then he does so, and then he releases it onto the internet, and bingo, we have the web. Now, that kind of stuff never happened before. That's why it's important.
Let's tie those two things together, though. In your talk, you quoted Tim Berners-Lee saying that one of the major problems these days was that for most people, the internet is Facebook. So why is that so?
Well, it's a fundamental category mistake in a way, because essentially it's confusing an application, something that runs on the network, with the network itself. And if you focus only on applications, you miss what I think of as the essence of the network, which is its ability to foster permissionless innovation. The risk I see is that if we legislate hastily and clumsily in order to address an issue that's brought up by an application, we may either accidentally or on purpose undermine what's really important about the net, which is this disruptive potential. The thing that policymakers have to understand is that for the internet, disruptiveness is a feature. It's not a bug. It's not something that's wrong with it. It's what was built into its architecture. It's in its DNA, as it were.
What's the importance, in your view, of the internet being a peer-to-peer network? And what problems do you see with the enclosure of the internet, such as Facebook represents?
Well, first of all, it was originally a peer-to-peer network, and then because of the demand for access to it, you couldn't work it on a peer-to-peer basis because the computers that people were using to hook up to the net in the 90s were incapable of being peers, as it were. That's changed with the spread of broadband technology and so on. So we could restore to some extent the peer-to-peer nature of the original network. But so long as we have lots of mobile phones on the rest of it, and more people access the net through mobile phones, which looks likely, the idea of going back to a full peer-to-peer architecture is dead, I think. You can't do it. I'm sorry, what was the other question?
Yes, I'm concerned about the enclosure of the internet, which is implied in Tim Berners-Lee's point.
Enclosure can mean a number of things, but what it can mean in relation to intellectual property is that the large and powerful companies in the world, which own a lot of quotes content, will persuade legislators, first of all, to vastly, even further increase the levels of IP or of copyright and other kinds of protection, in such a way that's the first thing to do. So they would like to use digital technology as a way of expanding the grip and the reach of copyright. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that they also realize that this technology, because everything is monitored that goes on it, would enable them to charge for everything, right down to the last sentence. Because you can do it, you can meter it, you could, for example, you could in principle, every time somebody logged onto a website to look at a page, you could say that's making a copy, so we're going to charge for that.
So somebody like Zuckerberg, who had no barrier to invention, could prevent it in others potentially.
Yes, once he's established. And the other problem we have is that because it's a network, and because you have this very strange sort of behaviour within networks, in some cases winners do take all. There is at the moment only one major social network, it's Facebook, and who knows, it might wind up as being the only one, just as for a time it looked as though Google would be the only search engine. You get this network effect, this winners take all effect, and that's, would we want a world in which the only social network was Facebook? Would we want a world in which the only search engine was Google?
Well, one of the people I follow is Dave Weiner in New York, who's saying one of the problems. He said one of the problems with the Facebook domination of the internet, its use, for instance, in the Arab revolutions, is that we have to make it necessary for dictators to take down the whole internet, not just Facebook and Twitter.
But the other mistake we make in relation, for example, a very good example of what Morozov was complaining about in terms of techno-utopianism was the kind of ludicrous stuff about the Arab Spring and the role of Twitter and Facebook and all of that. No, well, social networking obviously played a role in that, but and perhaps an important role. But the point is that people are making a mistake, and they think that Twitter and Facebook and other of these kind of spaces, that they are public spaces for political discourse. Actually, they're not. They are not public spaces. They are shopping malls, in effect. You and I can walk out of this building. We can go to Hyde Park Corner. We can stand on a soapbox and we can say whatever we like because it is a public space. But if you were to go to the Westfield Shopping Centre with your soapbox and you stand up in the middle and you say the same things, you get dragged out because it's not a public space. And we're making the mistake of thinking that Facebook is the same kind of space for having political discussions. It isn't. It's totally controlled by Facebook. And that's a big mistake.
John Naughton, that's a very interesting analogy. Thank you very much. John's new book, From Gutenberg to Zuckerberg, is available. Please read it. This is Richard Hearing for Vision on TV.